Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was assigned to Asuma and Team 10. Mizuki never got to shoot his mouth off at Naruto the night he took the Scroll of Seals. Other than skipping a half-manic monologue from him, what exactly did this change for everyone's favorite blonde ninja? Who knows? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 20, Who Booked This Crap? The next day resulted in Team 10 and Asuma reporting to the main meeting building that the exams begun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and through the doors in the back of the meeting room that had initially opened before the first test of the exams, the three proctors Anko, Kikuchi, and Ah walked with the remaining passing teams in tow to join the ones that had passed the previous day. These teams were considerably more banged up, and some looked as if they had even received medical treatment before coming here. So now the party was all queued up and ready to go. They had 12 teams, no more no less. But that was still 36 genin, quite a few. Joining Team 10, Team Guy, the team from Oto with the mummy-looking guy, the team from Kumo with the two girls and the one boy, the older Kiri team, the Suna team with Gaara, the Iwa team with the guy that periodically tried to mad dog Naruto, and the team from Taki they now had from Konoha Team 7, Team 8, and Kabuto's team. Kabuto's team, in addition to Kabuto of course, had two more older genin. Both wore veils over their faces and dressed similar to Kabuto. One wore smaller eyeglasses than Kabuto wore and the other wore sunglasses. Both wore their headbands bandana style on their heads. As well as them, there was a team from Omegakure, all of whom wore white outfits that looked similar to straight jackets if they could be described. They all each wore breathing masks from their mouths and had cloths over their eyes. One of them had two eye holes cut in the cloth so that he could see, another had only one eye hole cut, and the last one had no eye holes cut in his cloth at all. The one with two eye holes had spiky hair, the one with one eye hole wore his headband like a bandana, and the one with no eye holes had bushy hair as well. That rounded out the field. But the question was, what was going to happen now? The second test was complete, so was that it? Were they all Chunin now, or did they have to do something else to reach that goal? As the teams all stood in line in front of the three proctors with their respective Jonin leader standing behind them, Ah spoke to them. I'd like to officially congratulate each and every one of you for succeeding where all of the other teams failed. You have all passed the second exam, now you can rest easy for the time being. We're not jumping directly into another test just yet. That got more than a few sighs of relief from some of the remaining genin, that put a smirk on the faces of Anko and Kikuchi, and even got a few laughs out of some of the more laid-back jonin in attendance. Kikuchi walked forward and cleared his throat to begin speaking. There is one more test that you can all choose to partake in. That being said, your performance thus far has all been taken into account. Still, this test will not take place for 5 more weeks, giving you the time to recover if need be and train to improve. Kiba was still rather tired, and after hearing that the next test wouldn't be for 5 weeks, wanted Kikuchi to cut to the chase so that he could leave and get some rest, train, and improve for what? What's the next test already? Before that we need to get your names and team grouping. Anko cut in, standing by a group of proctors ready to take down whatever information they were going to write. Will the jonin all state this information at this time? Kakashi spoke up first. Hatake Kakashi's team from Konoha Gakure no Sato, Uchiha Sasuke, Akimichi Chuji, and Hara no Sakura. Next was Asuma, from Konoha Gakure no Sato, Sarutobi Asuma's team, Narashikamaru, Uzumaki Naruto, and Yamanaka Ino. Jonin Baki's genin squad representing Sunagakure no Sato. The man with Gaara's team said. He wore a turban and a veil over one half of his face, Sabaku no Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro. A man with an oxygen mask over his mouth like the other Ame genin there at the moment was next. He had no cloth over his eyes and wore a flak jacket over the exact same suit his genin wore. Omegakure no Sato's last genin team from Jonin Sensei Ugetsu, Oboro, Mubi, and Kaguri. Guy was up next with a huge smile on his face. Might Guy's splendid genin team from Konoha Gakure no Sato, Rock Lee, Hyuga Neji, and Tenten. With that, his teeth let off a shimmer. From Kirigakure no Sato and Jonin Shiinin Tusui. A black spiky-haired man wearing a Kiri flak vest with a long-sleeved shirt underneath, sleeves long enough to reach 3 inches past his hands, said, Hojo Arita, Obata Mamako, and Geki Dojin. The tall older genin with the black and silver hair, the girl with the short dark hair and the large shield on her back, and the genin wearing the thick suit that basically covered his whole body all nodded respectively. Next the jonin from Taki came forward, my team from Takigaku no Sato, Fu, Huki, and Dorobu. He said, speaking of the girl with the light green hair and orange eyes, the normal-looking brown-haired kid, and the boy with spiky black hair that had the strange green and red eyes. Representing Konohagaku no Sato. Kurenai said in a straightforward manner, Abura Shino, Inyazuka Kiba, and Hyuga Hinata. She did not fail to notice the gaze of Neji on her team from where he was, even if it was only for a moment. An Oto Jonin with a smirk on his face and a long black ponytail spoke next, from Otagaku no Sato, Kinyuta Dosu, Abu Mizaki, and Chuchi Kin. A normal-looking Konoha Jonin with puffy light brown hair and glasses was subsequently, from Konohagaku no Sato, Yakushi Kabuto, Tsuragi Misumi, and Akadu Yorawi. The Kumo team did not have a Jonin present for them, much to the confusion of many, thus the blonde girl with the intimidating calm expression and the chest that should not have been that abundant for a 14-year-old took up introduction duties for her team. In place of the Jonin meant to be here for this team, I will introduce my squad. My name is Samui. Anko stopped her and asked a question, and where's your Jonin? We sent word to everyone that this thing was at 4. You can't tell me that they still blew it off. Samui shook her head, our Jonin was never here in the first place. He isn't allowed to leave Kumo for certain reasons, so we came here under the command of another Jonin whose actual team had already been eliminated. The boy in her team shook his head as he placed a sucker in his mouth. Oh man, this sucks. Is it going to be Sensei's fault that we get disqualified? Maybe they'll kill us off thinking we're suspicious terrorists or something. Everyone in the room looked at him with a deadpan expression. Just, shut up Omoi. The red-haired girl next to him said, holding her head as if she had a headache. Ah took that moment to give his input. There are times when a team has to proceed with a mission without a proper squad leader, so in this case it is allowed, if only this once. Please continue to introduce your team. Samui nodded and continued, my teammates are Omoi and Karui. As I've already said, my name is Samui. We represent Kumogaku no Sato. With herself and her team introduced, she stepped back into formation with her fellow Kumo genin. Kyuin Wakai from Iwagaku no Sato introducing his genin team. A rather plain-looking Iwa ninja announced, Hisashi, Misaru, and Jun. After a second the proctors took everything they had written down into the back room and Anko turned back towards all of the teams with a huge grin on her face, and now that the formalities are out of the way, let's get to the fun part of the explanation. Tell the kiddies what's next, old man. Ah took offense to the old man crack, but other than a gnashing of teeth and a mumbling of, back in his day, he didn't let it show. All 36 of you will be entered in a 12-team tournament meant to be held in a public place of meeting in 5 weeks' time. You will all be observed by each of your respective villages, the daimyos of multiple countries, and potential clientele. Performing to the best of your abilities and showing your true merit as shinobi will be paramount. But don't just think that winning matches will get you promoted. Kikuchi said cryptically. The brawny Iwa shinobi seemed to like making the brains of the genin overheat as he left his statement at that. Ah nodded and followed up on his colleague's words, simply winning your way through the tournament doesn't matter. You need to show the judges why you should be promoted. Running through the competition like a battle axe is nice and all, but that doesn't show very much leadership or tactical skill. Anko's grin dropped and a serious expression found its way to her face. We don't need some kind of mindless juggernaut out in the field with the power to give orders. Many good shinobi would be killed that way. She barely noticed the flinch from 2 of the competitors from different countries. If you win, you get to show more reasons as to why you should be promoted, but you can go the entire tournament without meriting a promotion. The grin then came back to her face. On the other hand, your team could lose in the very first round and one of you or all of you could be considered for promotion. Exactly. Kikuchi said with a chuckle, each round will be set up as such. Both teams will pick a side of a coin. The winner of the resulting coin toss will be able to choose how the teams will compete for that round, either in 1-on-1 matches or 3-on-3 team battles. 1-on-1 matches will be selected at random, with the drawing of the fighters going up at the conclusion of each bout until all 3 members of one team are unable to compete. Team battles will go until all of one side cannot continue or surrender. Proctors set around the battlefield will deem whether or not a shinobi can continue in the battle and will escort the defeated away. It is possible to die during this tournament, just so you know. He was rather pleased when no one seemed to be scared away by that prospect. Very good. At that time, a screen dropped down from the ceiling as Ah spoke again. We're now going to show you the random drawing for your first round matches in this tournament, so pay attention. Bracket 1. Match 1, Rock Lee, Hyuga Neji, Tenten vs Samui, Karui, Omoi. Match 2, Narashikamaru, Uzumaki Naruto, Yamanaka Ino vs Hisashi, Misaru, Jun. Match 7, winner of Match 1 vs winner of Match 2, winner heads to semifinals. Bracket 2. Match 3, Fu, Hooki, Doroba vs Aburameshino, Inyazuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata. Match 4, Uchiha Sasuke, Akimichi Chuji, Harano Sakura vs Kinyuta Doso, Abu Mizuku, Chuchi Kin. Match 8, winner of Match 3 vs winner of Match 4, winner heads to semifinals. Bracket 3. Match 5, Sabaku Nogara, Tamari, Kankuro vs Aburo, Mubi, Kaguri. Match 6, Yakushi Kabuto, Tsurugi Misumi, Akadu Yoroi vs Hojo Arita, Obata Mamako, Geki Dojin. Match 9, winner of Match 5 vs winner of Match 6, winner advances directly to final round. Semifinals. Match 10, winner of Match 7 vs winner of Match 8, winner of Bracket 1 vs winner of Bracket 2. Winner heads to final round. The winner of Match 9 will advance to the final round, winner of Bracket 3 will receive a bye out of the semifinals directly to the final round. Finals. Match 11, winner of Match 10 vs winner of Match 9. Troublesome. Shikamaru muttered right off the bat as he looked at the tournament setup, so now we're entertainment, great. While that was what he said out loud, his brain was already working hard in thought, so if we wanted to go all the way through the tournament we'd have to fight an extra fight. I knew this Chunin exam stuff would be more trouble than it was worth. What he wouldn't give for a nice melody rank mission right now. Naruto on the other hand was paying attention to another part of the setup, so that Garagai is all the way on the other side of the brackets, good. Naruto's clones had told him more than he needed to know about Gaara, he was going to stay as far away from him as he could if he could help it. He most certainly did not want to tangle with him anytime soon, but even so he still had his confidence about him, so what if we have to fight him? It's just sand, there's a way to beat it. There has to be, and if we end up going against him I'll know how to beat it by then. With his thoughts so firmly on who would be fighting on who on the board, he never noticed the Iwa genin with the shaved head Hisashi staring at him and grinning. Ino did however, and gave Hisashi her best warning look to stop with the evil eyes or else. He just looked at her in amusement and mouthed the words "just wait" to her, chuckling to himself before looking away again. With that issue over with and done, Ino decided to get a little psychological advantage, or to mess with someone. Well, it looks like I won't be seeing for it until the semifinals, if she even makes it that far. She said to no one in particular. What was that, Ino pig? Sakura replied harshly. It was easy to hear since it wasn't like Ino was trying to keep that statement to herself. Your slacker team probably won't even make it onto the field to begin with. She shot back challengingly. Hey. Ino said with her hands on her hips, don't think that just because you have Sasuke-kun on your team you can beat us when the time comes. They can't protect you. He and Chuji will probably be tired from carrying your butt through the first few rounds, and we've got the human hummingbird on our team. She finished, poking a non-attentive Naruto in the head as he was still looking up at the tournament brackets. He'll never run out of steam. Huh. Ino's poke at his head brought Naruto back down from his own muddling thoughts. Was someone talking about me? He asked, turning towards Ino and getting an innocent whistle from her before he noticed Sakura staring at Ino with a twitching brow. Hey Sakura-chan. Good luck in the tournament, huh? Sakura stopped glaring at Ino to look up at Naruto and blink at his good-natured offer of luck. She wasn't so annoyed the way that she was in the academy. Maybe because she didn't have him hanging off of her like a lost puppy every day. Oh, thanks Naruto. Naruto in small doses wasn't really bad at all, and from their time in Wave she knew for sure that he wasn't a terrible ninja. He did have a pretty even fight with Sasuke. He still couldn't win now though. Sasuke was even better than he was back then. That was what she thought. Still, what was she going to do? Hit him for saying hi and wishing her luck? That would be completely absurd. Who would do something like that? That's my Goldie-kun. Ino remarked with a smirk, he's such a nice boy, trying to keep the spirit of the riffraff up. Getting another growl out of Sakura, Ino was thoroughly satisfied with the thought that she had gotten into Sakura's head, at least for now. I'm never going to be able to stop it, am I? Naruto thought to himself as he saw Ino and Sakura break into another argument. That simply wasn't going to end until one of them ended up with Sasuke, if that ever happened at all. It probably wouldn't even end then. The proctors could hear the chattering amongst the genin break out and that it was beginning to steer away from focused conversation to just all-out talking. Therefore there was no reason to keep them there any longer. All right. Kikuchi said, his voice booming through the echoing room and getting the attention of all. You are all aware of what will take place in 5 weeks. Return home and prepare. Make sure that your next effort is your best one because it's your last chance to make an impact. You're all dismissed. Yeah. Anko said with a nod, we've actually all got to leave. The samurai pretty much said that we don't have to go home, but we've all got to get the hell out of here, at least until a week before the final exam. She gave the genin a wave with her sweet yet threatening smile. I'm looking forward to watching you all kick the crap out of each other. Hope you brats all make it back here in one piece. After the explanation of the final exam that was to take place in 5 weeks, the Jonin of the Konoha teams that had made it that far to begin with took their teams to a buffet-style restaurant at Kakashi's behest, mostly for the sake of the man's wallet since he had to treat his team which included Chuji to something like this at least once, he was more or less obligated to as Team 7's sensei. As everyone currently had a plate and the younger ninja especially took to the meal with vigor due to having not had anything remotely similar in at least 2 days, Naruto seemed to just be more or less picking at his own food. Most had assumed that since if you stabbed Naruto he would bleed broth instead of blood, his mood was plainly because of the distinct lack of ramen as an option at this restaurant. As loath as he was to do so, Shikamaru, who was sitting on one side of Naruto between him and Chuji, knew that this wasn't about the food since no one was forcing Naruto to eat any vegetables or anything of the like, therefore he felt the need to speak on the matter. Naruto, what's the matter? Shouldn't you be all fired up about the next part of the exam? Said boy turned towards him with a questioning look. Hey, I'm not excited about it at all since I doubt you or Ino are just going to quit. So I have to fight too so you guys don't get killed in a 3-on-2. Then was where Naruto got to actually thinking about something. Team 10 didn't have to win the whole tournament, they just had to do well enough to get promoted. That meant that they didn't have to fight Gaara and his team in the final round if both were to make it that far. No matter how good he thought he was, there was just something barbaric about Gaara that he was missing. The way he slaughtered so many clones without blinking, even when staring an explosion in the face, was unnerving. And Naruto's clones hadn't even scratched him. Hey. Shikamaru finally said with a bit of assertion in his voice, what are you frying your brain thinking about over there? It's weird when you're not jumping off the walls about showing everyone how good you are or whatever it is you're usually babbling about. At that moment, Kiba spoke up, he's just thinking about all of the ways that Akamaru and me are going to kick his ass if you guys even get that far. As he grinned in appreciation of his own jibe, Akamaru barked from beside Kiba, sitting on the same Seiyushin at the low-raised table. Hearing that brought Naruto back into the moment. I know your fleas are bothering you, Kiba, but keep all of that barking of yours down. I already told you whoever has to fight me is going to be going home sooner than they think. Don't make me muzzle you. Naruto's response made Kiba turn towards Shikamaru and let out a chuckle. There, you're welcome. Now he's back to normal. He said before he returned to eating. Naruto turned towards Shikamaru who was looking at him with a scrutinizing gaze before he started speaking under his breath. I know you're kind of put off by that Suna kid you told us about. Naruto's eyes widened and he was about to dispute his claim before Shikamaru cut him off. Save it, all right. I was near the kid when we were resting after the second test, remember? The entire time he was just staring at me until I got away from him. I could see his muscles fighting to keep from moving like he was holding himself back from trying to kill me. The bloodlust was smothering. Blue eyes locked onto Shikamaru's and couldn't understand why he was so calm if he understood. You don't get it, Shikamaru. I threw 50 clones at him. None of them ever even touched him. They never got close. It must have been like a beehive in there, but he killed them all by himself and he didn't move an inch until they were all gone. Stop worrying about it. Shikamaru finally said, leaving no more room for argument. If you're that worried, then we'll come up with something by the time we have to fight the Suna team, but remember that there's always one thing we can do if we've still got nothing by then, so don't worry about it. He pointed down the table where Sasuke was more or less sandwiched between Ino and Sakura, doing his best to just eat his food and ignore them. They sure aren't worrying yet. Naruto observed what Shikamaru had been pointing at and tilted his head at how Sasuke seemed to be indifferently letting Ino and Sakura bicker between him. He had to wonder how he could take it. It must have been a practiced sort of focus, to ignore the things around you. Maybe Naruto had to try and practice some of that right now and block it out. There was nothing he could do but prepare, and Shikamaru would make sure he had his things in order as well. They had a month, he would worry then. Who knew? Maybe by then there wouldn't even be anything to worry about. 3 days later, Konohagakure no Sato, Naruto's apartment. The trip back to Konoha for all of the genin who had gone out for the exam was pretty quiet. Those that were eliminated earlier on in the testing pretty much headed back before the end of the testing period on their own to avoid any mortification and to wallow in their own disappointment. Those that stayed treated it like time for a small break before being subjected to the walk of shame. Walk of shame because the ones from Konoha that had made it to the finals were mostly kids. 9 rookies, 3 single-year genin, and a team with a genin that had failed several times in the past had made it. It was admittedly quite a good feeling when one of them looked over at one of the ninja that had failed and found them unable to straightforward meet their gaze. The same ones that were harping on them for being young at the start were now sitting back unable to even watch from the sidelines. Naruto was more or less grinning all the way through the gate and then some. Tomorrow matters of how the next month of training with Team 10 would be set up, but for now it was time to rest and take some pride in the fact that they had thoroughly kicked some ass. According to Shikamaru, even if he didn't get promoted in the end, going so far on his first attempt to do so would keep his mother off of his back for quite some time. At least until the next exams rolled around. Walking into the door of his apartment, Naruto most certainly didn't expect to find Jiraiya sitting on his couch eating his food and going over his attempts to better his handwriting for his own Fuinjutsu studies. That was what he bore witness to once he entered his home. However, "What the hell are you doing here, Ero-sensei?" Hearing Naruto's voice, the tall white-haired man turned to him before registering the new title he had just been labeled with, "What the hell? What happened to Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto pointed directly at him with a look of intent in his eyes. "The random stuff in that book of yours, all of that crap from the week before we left to go to Tetsu no Kuni, you totally corrupted me." And saying that put a grin on Jiraiya's face. "Why are you happy about that?" "No reason," Jiraiya stated cryptically before seeming to vanish and reappear behind Naruto to pick him up in a big hug. "Oh kid, I'm so happy. If you say I'm influencing you before I even really spent that much time with you, then you really are the ideal pupil. I mean, if I can influence you with a book before you even got to know me, then who knows what I can pass down to you." He was ignoring the fact that Naruto was an impressionable 12-year-old boy that lacked distinct male role models until a few months ago, as well as the fact that such a dynamic personality of his own would rub off. "Now to really get the ball rolling, I need to teach you the wonders of the female form. I will set you on fire," Naruto said in a growl as Jiraiya had yet to put him down. "Why are you in my house anyway? Aren't you rich?" It wouldn't have surprised Naruto if Jiraiya had in fact stayed there in his apartment the entire time he had been gone. For some reason he just came off as that sort of guy. Jiraiya let Naruto down and pointed at himself in a grandiose fashion. "Kid, I'm a sage. Despite all of my monetary riches and abundant assets, I am more suited to live off the fat of the land." "Good," Naruto said as he walked to his front door and opened it up to escort Jiraiya out. "Then go do that, because I'm busy. I've got to figure out what to do next to get ready for the finals of the Chunin exams." A pleasantly surprised look came over Jiraiya's face at hearing that. "You made it that far on your first try and you're just a rookie to boot. Way to go, Gaki. That's damned impressive." It honestly was. He couldn't recall the last time any Konoha genin had accomplished that feat as a rookie, even when the exams were village exclusive. "So what are you going to do now?" Naruto looked at the man who seemed legitimately interested in how he had done. He figured that he would pretty much just get that week of having Jiraiya assist him with his Fuinjutsu studies after he broke the news about the Kyuubi, and that would more or less be that. A big part of him was glad that wasn't the case. Well, I don't know yet. I'm supposed to be meeting up with Asuma-sensei tomorrow, so we can figure that out. A nod came from Jiraiya. That was reasonable enough to him. When you figure it out, come find me. If you can pass one test that I give to those I see as having potential to be my disciples, then I'll assist you with a little bit of your training, and not just the Fuinjutsu. Really? Naruto looked skeptical. All they did on the times they had spent together previously was Jiraiya would instruct him on how to get down making the basic seals perfectly, not a flaw allowed in them, and they would peek on girls near some waterfall Jiraiya would peek on girls near some waterfall. Not Naruto. And no, clones didn't count as him peeking. You'll help me out? But what can you teach me besides Fuinjutsu? Jiraiya gave Naruto a shocked look before palming his face. What are they teaching you runts in the academy these days? I thought I was supposed to be a big deal. He slid his hand down his face and deadpanned at Naruto. Look, Fuinjutsu is cool and everything when you get good at it, but if you really think that all I'm good for is sealing, then I'm even more insulted than I was when you first walked into the house. Why? Naruto asked with a tilt of his head. Because I'm the best damn ninja in the entire world, brat. Jiraiya exclaimed in a grandiose and splendiferous manner before coughing and settling down. In my own honest and humble opinion. Then why aren't you Hokage? Naruto replied without missing a beat, deadpan look in full effect on his whisker-marked face. Why is the old man still running things if you're supposed to be the best ninja in the village? Jiraiya had to fight the urge to facepalm once again, mumbling about how this kid apparently wanted to be Hokage. Look, just being the strongest ninja doesn't make you qualified to be the leader of the village. For all of the ass I can kick, I really don't feel comfortable leading a large group to save my own life. I kind of hated being a jonin when I had to lead teams on my own just because of that. I'm more of a bulldozer. I've never really been much for tactics, but I don't really suck at them. Naruto then thought about how the proctors introducing the last test of the Chunin exam said that simply being stronger than all of the other competitors wouldn't automatically register a promotion, even if they won the tournament. And it had to only get stricter the further up the ladder one attempted to climb, so I guess Shiho-chan really was right after all when we first met. Being as strong as a Hokage is fine, but if I don't know what to do with it, being strong won't matter. Sarutobi-sensei is the man though. That's why he's still Hokage. Jiraiya said, shaking his head as if even dredging up memories of the Sandaime Hokage in action took him aback to this day. I can talk about myself all I want to, but that's the ninja you should try to be like. If you don't believe me, then go ahead and ask him to spare some of his personal training time to fight you. He let out a chuckle, and make sure I'm there to see the fight because I need a good laugh these days. No thanks. Naruto said, only imagining what kind of horrible things the current reigning Hokage could do to him if he was stupid enough to pick a fight with him, even just for shits and giggles. Jiraiya patted Naruto on the head. Good boy. You know, you remind me a lot of me back when I was a genin. Naruto raised an eyebrow as Jiraiya kept a hand on his head. Really? How? Hard-headed kid. Jiraiya started to explain matter-of-factly, a straightforward kind of guy. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that you also have a smoking hot blonde girl on your team that's only going to obtain bombshell status by the time you're 18, just like the one on my team did. Naruto shrugged Jiraiya's hand off of his head as he glared at him. You mean Ino? At that a grin crossed Jiraiya's face. So you're admitting that she's good looking? That's a start. He ignored Naruto's twitching eye and took note that Naruto did not vehemently dispute the fact that he thought Ino was pretty. Now she'll wind up being a total knockout if my early warning radar is still in full effect, but she probably won't ever get the miracle chest that Tsunade has, and if you're lucky she won't have Tsunade's temper or absurdly abusive strength. What does that have to do with any fucking thing we're talking about? Naruto asked loudly, waving his arms indignantly as he was sick of the current conversation, mostly because he didn't want to talk about a 12-year-old girl he was going to see tomorrow with a 50-year-old man that he knew to be and had accepted as a raging pervert. I don't even think I know who you're talking about anyway. And stop talking about Ino's chest, you pervert. Jiraiya smirked and tapped his head like he was mentally one step ahead. I don't need to make you talk about it. I made you see it the day we met, remember? He then saw Naruto's face turn beet red, either out of anger or embarrassment. It didn't matter, both were good as far as Jiraiya was concerned. You're welcome. Jiraiya was certain that Naruto would thank him later, eventually. That's it, dammit. Warak no Jutsu, sexy jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Naruto transformed into the rather infamous nude female form that gave his jutsu its namesake, expecting Jiraiya to be flat on his back looking up at the ceiling. Sadly, he was somewhat off on his estimation of what effect the jutsu would have on Jiraiya. All that occurred was the widening of Jiraiya's eyes in shock as he observed the jutsu before a grin slowly crossed his face and a slow nosebleed began to drip from his nose. He leisurely pulled out a notepad and a pen and began writing. Is it wrong of me to say that I think we'd be way closer if this was actually the real you? As Jiraiya realized how what he just said could have been taken, Naruto then turned back to normal in another puff of smoke, an unamused expression on his face. Yeah, that sounds kind of creepy, doesn't it? Naruto let out a defeated sigh and once again opened his front door. Please get out of my house, Ero-sensei. I need to go take a shower now. I don't feel clean. Jiraiya blinked and nodded slowly. I wouldn't worry too much right now. This is just one of those moments that we're both going to suppress and forget for years until something traumatic dredges the memory up by accident. He waved weakly as he stepped outside of the door. By tomorrow you'll forget this happened. Naruto just blinked once with his hand on the door. Forget what happened? He said, feigning ignorance about the recent episode before shutting the door. Good boy. Jiraiya said behind the closed door. The next day, Team 10 training ground. The high of making it to the final part of the Chunin exams had faded, at least for Naruto and Ino it had. It was never entirely sure at all that Shikamaru was even ecstatic in the first place for achieving such a feat due to his self-professed long-term goals of mediocrity. Thus by the time they sat in front of Asuma they had significantly sobered from the swagger they had been traveling down the roads with the other day. That was fantastic for him since he would get a more objective outlook from them on what needed to be done to succeed in their coming matches against the Iwa team in the first round. Alright, the most important thing about the three of you is that you more or less cover each other's weaknesses. Shikamaru was the first one he pointed at. You're lazy and unmotivated. He bluntly stated. Shikamaru merely shrugged. It wasn't like he was being told something that he didn't already know about himself. He was a slacker and damnably proud of it, at least he would be if being proud of himself wasn't so troublesome. Yeah, I know. I've met your father. Asuma stated before sticking a cigarette in his mouth and lighting it up. I'm afraid there's not much that's ever going to change that except for immediate life or death circumstances. You don't ever seem to have any sort of sense of urgency, and that's a double-edged sword, to be honest. But then where you lack enthusiasm and purpose behind the things you do, Naruto and Ino make up for that. You're the most intelligent one on the team. Your teammates allow for that to be of actual use by staying far more active, allowing you to think clearer. When in the heat of a pitched battle you always look for some way to get your shadow into play. The one thing you're not lazy with is your work on the Nara clan jutsu for certain. And you have a plethora of cheap tricks that you use very well. He laughed at the frown that appeared on Shikamaru's face. There's nothing wrong with a cheap trick. The more of them you have, the less actual trump cards you have to reveal in order to win. While he wasn't as stagnant on the battlefield as he once had been, Shikamaru was still basically the slower member of the team who preferred staying inactive even while in combat. Pointing at Ino next, Asuma continued, Ino, you've worked hard to do more to supplement what you can do with your family techniques. You've come up with ways to threaten your opponents completely and keep them from thinking about you jutsu at all, even if they know you're a Yamanaka in the first place with your poisons. No matter what, you have the ability to switch up your battle approach from a ranged poison attack to a mid-range attempt to use your clan technique. Either or has the potential to end a battle in a hurry. Ino smiled at the compliment. Learning how to make all of those poisons and the tools she used them with was hard. If I had to point out a weakness, it would be that once things get close you're somewhat lost in a fight, but a month isn't time to fix that. You also lack termed focus. Most of the time, if there isn't something that you can handle or solve relatively quickly, you'll leave Naruto or Shikamaru to do it. You need to fix that because a Chunin has to be a problem solver. Lives will be in your hands. Naruto was inwardly dreading his own turn. Back in the academy he always hated getting the rundown in a public forum about what his strengths were and where he could improve. Part of him still believed that he was about to take a tongue lashing due to his having never really been complimented on his skill set due to its lack of actual existence while in school. Naruto, Asuma said as he looked at the boy in question, who actually flinched due to being caught up in his own thoughts about what might be said. You cover this team's most central weaknesses. You're the close-range specialist the way I figured you'd be from the beginning, and you've only improved since then. Even without your machete, if you're disarmed, I don't see very many genin finding ways to handle you up close. You cater to your own strength of having tons of chakra with the way you use your Kage Bunshin, and you're learning something new altogether with Fuinjutsu in your own private study. That was a better compliment than Naruto thought he'd receive, but Asuma wasn't done. The thing is though, you don't really have anything that's effective once you get outside of 5 feet to use against an opponent. If you can't reach them or your clones can't reach them, then you have to rely on Shikamaru or Ino to either use a trick to flush them towards your direction or attack them altogether to give you an opening to get back inside. I also see that you have a little bit of a knack for unorthodox maneuvers, but you don't seem to try and dig that deep into yourself until you're in some kind of trouble. If I were you, I'd try to cultivate that a little bit more. Start planning ahead a bit. Flying by the seat of your pants is only good when falling is the alternative. If you really want it, you have the drive to do way better. Well, that wasn't exactly the dressing down that Naruto had been expecting when it came to his turn to be scrutinized. All he could really do in return was nod, indicating that he understood. Having said his bit on each of his genin, Asuma switched gears. Now about your more technical weaknesses, Shikamaru and the more physical aspects of the job as well as the drive, Ino with the close fighting, and Naruto with anything having to do with range. There's not much I can do about that. All 3 genin had to keep themselves from face faulting, but this isn't about that. A month is enough time for a patch job that will get you through the rest of the exams on that part of your skills. No, now it's time to accentuate the positives and hide your negatives. Ino and Naruto both looked at him in a confused manner while Shikamaru breathed a sigh of relief as he seemed like he understood Asuma's point. Asuma decided to explain to make sure everyone was following along. If the problem is that you can't hit your opponent outside of your range of attack, or you would get your ass kicked once you get within arm's length of an enemy, why go there? Hide it. Highlight your positive points. Show the judges that you know damn well what you're not good at, and show them that you can avoid being put in a situation where it would even matter. This is a showcase and you're going to want to make yourselves look good. Damn good. No half-assing it. So what exactly should we do? Naruto asked with a squinted look of hard concentration on his face. Asuma let out a chuckle. You all have shown that if it comes down to it, you can come up with some very nasty combinations of your skills. I want more of that come tournament time. In the case of a team battle, I don't want it to even be an issue of who would win it. You all cover the others' asses with what you can do. Now how are you going to handle your schedule for the month? He asked before noticing that they were just staring at him. I'm not helping you with this part. I'm asking you how you are going to handle it. The 3 moved together with Shikamaru starting off with a sigh. Okay, we have a month to get this together. I'd say the first half of the week we work on our own personal training, and the second half we get together, and on the 7th day we do whatever we want with the time. Like sleep or do nothing at all. This was still Shikamaru after all. Oh. Naruto said after taking in the idea of the schedule. So the 7th day is so we don't get all burned out on training and start to slack during our actual sessions? Or so we can look into something different than what we're probably going to work on normally? Yeah, sure, let's go with that. Shikamaru answered abruptly before looking between Naruto and Ino. So is that good with you both or what? Ino shrugged her shoulders. That's just fine with me. I'm going to try to kick Daddy's ass into gear and see if he'll help me train. Maybe he can teach me a new jutsu. She wasn't holding her breath on that, however. Her dad was very stingy with the idea of giving her another jutsu from the family collection. He wanted her to perfect Shintenshin no Jutsu by barely having to use much time to take aim in order to make sure she wouldn't miss and leave her body vulnerable, as well as making sure she could release the jutsu quickly to prevent damage from occurring while she was in the body she was possessing. Hearing Ino talk about a new jutsu made Naruto think about the jutsu he had come up with and had yet to test on an actual person. But he had other things that he needed to deal with before going to play with a concept attack. I like it. Naruto said in reference to the schedule of the workouts. that way if anyone comes up with something new they can do they have time to get it down well enough to use. They could probably even work it into one of their formations or battle strategies if someone could master a new jutsu over the course of the month. Asuma watched them work out their training schedule and it worked great for him. Unless someone asked him specifically for some one-on-one time he would show up 3 days out of the week to help them all as a team. The rest of the week he could come up with his own ways to help them and do his own thing. Maybe get in some training of his own. Ever since he started training this team he really didn't have his own time to train himself. He could help Team 10, keep himself in shape for the month, and teach his team to be self-sufficient at the same time. It was an all-around win. He stepped in and commented on the plan of action for the month. You all seem to have your own ideas of what you want to do. Just remember that even on your personal days of off days you can always come find me if you think you need the help. You have all the resources you need to succeed, so there's no reason you three can't all come out of this thing as Chunin. He then thought of something else as an afterthought, especially since I still have money on all three of you to outdo the other Konoha teams. No pressure though. All three of the Team 10 genin spoke up simultaneously. Don't worry, there isn't any. They said in dry tones of voice after hearing that Asuma still had a bet on them. Why would they care about money they were never going to see? Later that day. Since today was technically a personal training day, Naruto was not willing to waste a second of it. After the short team meeting dismissed and they all split up, Naruto went looking for Jiraiya. Due to the fact that Naruto could now pin chakra signatures to certain people with his scouting jutsu due to his jump in skill with it he could locate Jiraiya. It also didn't hurt that he knew the places where the man might be. Either the hot spring or that waterfall with the hot women that Naruto worked with Jiraiya at the week before they left to go to Tetsu no Kuni. It was still summer, even though in Hai no Kuni the weather was always pretty pleasant, thus he figured that the women would keep going back to that waterfall, hence Jiraiya would be there. And lo and behold Naruto found him in the same field they had used previously, crouched and staring through the bushes with a scope as he giggled to his heart's content at the scantily clad women frolicking in the river behind it. Oh, that's right, bring your friends ladies. The more the merrier I always say. Gahahaha. That's it. Go ahead and give her a tight hug in the water. You haven't seen her in a while, huh? Naruto just walked up on the man quietly before he got right behind him and cocked his foot back, prepared to deliver a powerful kick to the man's rear end. The moment he let his foot fly, massive grin on his face, well Naruto didn't quite know what happened. All he knew was that 1 second he was about to kick Jiraiya, the next he was on his back 10 meters away looking up at the sky. Huh. Shikamaru is onto something with the whole cloud watching thing. I kind of want to go to sleep. That was possibly the potential concussion he had just suffered talking though. Naruto slowly sat up to see Jiraiya still looking through the bushes, only with his fist outstretched from delivering the punch that sent Naruto flying back. That was fast, he never even saw or felt the man shift his body to do it. Don't sneak up on me when I'm doing my research, Gaki. Jiraiya said as he kept peeking through the bushes. I take my occupation as a writer of adult literature quite seriously. This is my work. Naruto stood back up, dusting himself off. Whatever you say, Ero-sensei. Get some more stuff for your porn books later. You told me to find you after I was done with Asuma-sensei and my team. I said it was adult literature. Jiraiya turned and shouted at Naruto, staying quiet enough to not turn on the girls in the distance to the fact that he had been peeping on them, and about the training. Could you come back later? This is some prime viewing time. A firm shake of the head from Naruto was the answer. I can't do that, Ero-sensei. I won't be an enabler to your filthy addiction. You weren't saying that last week. Jiraiya muttered, getting Naruto's cheeks to turn red momentarily as it was quite clear then that he could see what Jiraiya saw in spying on the women. Alright, if time is money then let's hurry up and have you impress me so I can finish teaching you that seal of yours. A seal? Jiraiya was going to teach him a seal? But he thought he was supposed to come up with his own eventually out of personal study. You're going to teach me a seal? Wait, you've been teaching me a seal? When? Jiraiya smirked, back the week before you left. Why do you think I was making you write practice arrays while throwing rocks at you? Because it was funny. Naruto replied questioningly. It had been a miserable week for certain, but he had come back every day with the assurance that the next day Jiraiya would teach him something. Apparently he had been the entire time. Yes. Jiraiya said with a grin on his face, yes, it was fun. But it served a purpose, to teach you how to draw your seals and focus at the same time. What if the course of an entire battle was counting on you finishing a seal? Would you allow the explosions and the fighting that would probably be going on around you to stop you from finishing it or to mess it up? That was the most basic lesson I could give you, and it's important to the actual technique you're going to learn now. First though. Naruto didn't like the way he said that last part. First what? Jiraiya began to laugh slowly. First you have to show me something important before we really begin. Something important? Naruto just stared at Jiraiya with a twitch in his eye. I'm not going to show you Warak no Jutsu again, so just forget it, you perv. Not that. Jiraiya said as he crossed his arms before pulling out some special ink and a few prepared scrolls, dropping them on the ground directly in front of himself before making a trio of hand seals. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. A clone of Jiraiya appeared and picked up the supplies on the ground. The clone set up the scrolls in a circle 20 feet in circumference around itself and sat down in the middle. Naruto was curious, but Jiraiya was quick to explain, "You're going to protect my clone from me. I am going to attack that clone which is going to represent you or a clone of you attempting the jutsu I'm going to teach you." His voice was now gravely serious. "When you get good with this jutsu you'll be able to pull it off in less than 2 minutes. Until then you won't be able to perform it without at least that long in preparation time. I have to fight you," Naruto said, somewhat dismayed at the thought of fighting Jiraiya. Not because he figured he would hurt the man, it was actually vice versa in that case. "I can't beat you. You're not supposed to," Jiraiya said seriously. "You're only supposed to keep me away from the circle the clone is sitting in. If I pass that circle then that means I can attack my dummy clone and the jutsu will never be finished. It is important that you hold me off for at least 3 minutes since that would be the minimum amount of time you yourself would need to prepare the seal I want to teach you at best." He pulled out a stopwatch and held it up. Naruto looked at the clone in the circle and then at Jiraiya before nodding. Taking that as Naruto's acceptance of the test, Jiraiya began to walk 40 yards away from Naruto before turning around and giving him a few moments to get ready. "Do whatever you think you have to in order to keep me away from that circle," he instructed, and was pleased to see Naruto immediately make 50 Kage Bunshin in order to block him. "Good, but when you yourself use the seal or have a clone use it you're going to need most of your chakra that you're splitting through all of these ones you have out. You didn't say I couldn't use any though," Naruto said as he and all of his clones slowly drew their machetes and held them at the ready. "Start," he demanded, wanting to get this test over with. Jiraiya immediately ran towards the circle that was being blocked by Naruto's clones and scoffed when he saw a direct charge from around 10 of them coming his way. Deciding to not flat out blitz Naruto since he could have ended the test almost immediately if he had really been motivated to get to the circle, Jiraiya decided to hold back enough to give Naruto a fighting chance on his first try. "It's not like Asuma sensei's since I can't really stretch the blade like him, but it's better than nothing," Naruto thought to himself as his clones started to generate wind chakra to the blades of their weapons. One day he'd have to ask Asuma how to stretch the chakra extension of the blade and hope that it was easy enough to get down quickly. Until then he was supposed to go at Jiraiya all out, and his clones got that message loud and clear. Jiraiya noticed all of Naruto's clones about to attempt to cut him down with their machetes and remembered that this kid was training with Asuma. "Crap, I forgot that this kid uses wind chakra. He can channel chakra through that blade of his like Asuma can. Even if he used his defensive jutsu there was a chance that Naruto could still get through it. 20 seconds. He thought to himself. Jiraiya bit his finger and made a few hand seals. Kuchi Yase no Jutsu, Summoning Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Jiraiya was replaced by a large toad, bigger than the man himself had been. It wore thick samurai armor around its torso and on its arms as it blocked the strikes from Naruto's clones. Jiraiya, however, was nowhere in sight, something the clones took note of, and this allowed the toad to destroy them with a sweeping strike of its tongue. "A toad," Naruto said to himself in amazement before realizing that the test was still going on. "So where's Ero-sensei?" He asked himself as his remaining clones all surrounded the ceiling circle that marked the objective of the test. The armored toad rushed towards them and drew away several Narutos in an attempt to keep it from just bull rushing the circle and ending the test, stretching out the defensive perimeter even further. Jiraiya reappeared in a danger-closed zone near the clones and the circle and immediately initiated his next move, Hurry Jigoku, Hell Needles. From his hardened hair, singular follicles shot at the clones like needles. They could either take the hits or move and allow them to damage Jiraiya's clone, which was the goal to protect. Naruto's clones tried to block the needles, but they were too numerous, too fast, and he didn't have the reaction time to do something like that against something so small. A dozen more clones were shot down by that jutsu, leaving a major hole in the defense that the very close Jiraiya jumped right through before stopping in a pose as he breached the circle. Time. He looked at the stopwatch he had placed around his neck for safekeeping, 56 seconds. Not bad, you're almost a third of the way there. Too bad every second mattered. God damn it! Naruto exclaimed in defeat as he dispelled his clones and pulled at his hair. He pointed over at Gamma, who was still standing at attention before croaking to Jiraiya and disappearing in another puff of smoke. And what the hell was that? I didn't say I would never summon anything. Jiraiya said as he stepped out of the unharmed circle. That was just Gamma. I'm not going to throw the major toads at you, kid. Naruto looked between Jiraiya and where the toad had been and he felt a spark fry his brain. I didn't even know you could do that. Can you teach me how to do that? As far as Naruto was concerned, that toad was badass. On the other hand, Jiraiya was pleased that Naruto liked the toads. Maybe later. For now we're working on you earning this sealing jutsu. It's really high level. First you need to hold me off for 3 minutes. What does this jutsu even do? Naruto asked, having not cared previously, but after getting his ass thoroughly humiliated in under a minute he wanted to know what he was working for in the first place. If it's going to take me at least 3 minutes to load it up, then it's got to be something cool, right? It's the ultimate equalizer Gaki. Jiraiya said with a knowing grin. That's all I'm going to say for now. Once you finish this test I'll tell you everything you want to know. Now back to work. Let's try this again. Hey, you're not a genius. Who cares? Read this and you won't suck at Fuinjutsu, by Jiraiya. Patience is a virtue, speed is a blessing. Now even with a practiced speed, making simple seals will still take time. Making your own sealing scrolls and explosive tags will still take between 30 seconds and a full minute for even the best practitioners of Fuinjutsu. It is not a necessarily quick art. The power of certain techniques are worth the time, however. This is why sealing specialists are hot commodities in advance attack teams. While the other ninja are struggling in battle, a seal master can shift the situation towards their squad's side if allowed the time to do so. It will actually be easier to use Fuinjutsu when in a large battle. You have more people available to back you up and protect you while you prepare your eventual jutsu instead of having to risk going about it on your own with no cover. The best seals all take time. Seal masters spend months and years attempting to shave time off of their best techniques, but in the end you are never fast enough for your own liking. Every second matters in the grand scheme of things, but do not panic. You knew the risks of the jutsu before you sat down to attempt it. Don't cop out halfway through because it's taking too long. That would make the time you took to initiate the sealing jutsu in the first place and all of the sacrifices made by you and your comrades to get that far along in the first place meaningless. It will work when it is supposed to work. There is no forcing a seal. There is no speedy shortcut. When someone yells at you, hurry up. You're taking too long. You tell them to shut their fucking mouth because there's a reason you're the one using the jutsu and not them. Our art is precise. You cannot just bulldog your way through and bully it into activation. Chapter 21, No Whammies. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto. For the ownership of Naruto I hereby challenge Kishimoto to the prison knife game. You know, the one where you take a knife, put one hand flat and spread out on the table and stab the space between your fingers as fast as you can. My record is 153 stabs straight in under a minute without hitting a finger. Beat that motherfucker. Chapter 21, No Whammies. It was now the second week of training and the last day of personal training for that week. This meant that Naruto was still trying to keep Jiraiya off of the sealing position for 3 minutes. By now he had impressively reached 1 minute and 45 seconds. But each second further was harder and harder to obtain. It seemed like half a second better was a major accomplishment when he would get it. He'd scratch and claw as best he could, use as many clones as he could muster, throw the best attacks he had at Jiraiya to keep him away, but it would always inevitably end up with Jiraiya triumphantly breaching the ceiling area. The process was maddening. And Jiraiya said that when he actually used the real seal it would require more chakra than he could give if he were to make so many clones at once. Naruto had an easy way to solve that problem though. He would simply make one clone and make it activate the seal, then if he needed to he had the rest of his own chakra to use to split amongst his clones that he would use to actively fight and protect the single seal clone that had half of the original Naruto's initial chakra supply. It would be a simple case of splitting his chakra in half and then spamming his own remainder to fight. Right now though, the two were taking a break so that Naruto could learn the process needed to make the seal in the first place. In their usual field that had become their meeting place for training and whatnot, Naruto sat across from Jiraiya studying all of the patterns and arrays written a scroll, the same scroll that marked the circle he was trying to protect during their actual physical training. Make sure you know how to write this array perfectly. Jiraiya said, depending on how wide you want the range of this jutsu to reach, you are going to need more than one scroll. So this jutsu doesn't have a set range? Naruto asked as he attempted to commit the seal to memory while making his own master copy to use to prepare his own scrolls. Cool. Not as cool as you'd think. Jiraiya said, looking over Naruto's work. His handwriting was very good. He was expecting mistakes, but not here. He could thank Naruto's routine abuse of the Kagebunshin training method for that. Naruto could probably forge perfect signatures if he had to sometime down the line. Something to think about at a later point. It's not cool. Naruto said with a puzzled look on his face. Jiraiya then launched into an explanation. Okay, in order for this to work you need at least 3 scroll. If you have 3 scrolls then that will take up a 50-yard circumference and a ton of chakra for a normal person, but we both know you are not exactly normal, which is good for you in this case. You could probably use more than 12 scrolls and have enough chakra to keep going, but chakra probably isn't going to be a concern after you finish that jutsu. Naruto tilted his head curiously. Why? I thought chakra was important. Don't we die without chakra? Chakra isn't important after you activate this jutsu for a very good reason. Jiraiya said with a stern look on his face, once you activate this seal then no one can use any chakra within the range of your seal, at all. At that time, Jiraiya set up 3 scrolls in a circular pattern much like the position Naruto was meant to guard in their physical training, one hand seal for each of the 5 chakra natures. Remember them. He said as he went through the 5 seals, Tora, Mi, Inu, Saru, Ushi. Naruto went through the hand seals slowly along with Jiraiya, trying to remember the pattern just as Jiraiya called out the name of the jutsu, Shakura Myukaufyun, chakra disabling seal. Naruto cringed at Jiraiya, not expecting him to just activate the jutsu. A massive array spread out from the ground where the 3 scrolls were placed, the distance and range that Jiraiya claimed that it would, and in a flash appeared on both Naruto and Jiraiya's bodies before disappearing. After it had done so, Naruto didn't feel any different. That's it. A nod from Jiraiya was his answer. That's it. His lips quirked upwards in amusement. What? Did you expect an explosion or something? Kinda. Naruto replied lamely, looking at his hands and around at the entire area. Did it work? You tell me. Jiraiya said, sitting down on the ground with his cheek in one hand as he waited for Naruto to try something. Go ahead and make your dumb ass clones so I can get back to kicking your ass again. Now Naruto was very defensive of his signature jutsu. His clones were most certainly not dumb. Fine. Tajuyo Kagebunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. He said, his hands up in the necessary hand seal for the jutsu to take form. Nothing happened however, causing Naruto to blink blankly. Wow, really? Jiraiya chuckled at Naruto's reaction. Yep. Until you choose to undo the technique it lasts for as long as you're conscious, or for as long an opponent is in range, and whoever you're fighting won't be able to leave the battlefield. A frown then came over his face. It does the same thing to you though. It evens the playing field. The only thing someone can use after this is normal weaponry and taijutsu, but if you find it reasonable to use this move then your opponent probably outclasses you when using chakra. No chakra at all? Naruto couldn't help but consider that more of a hindrance than a help. Maybe he was looking at it wrong. Anything caught in the range of the seal when I activate it can't use chakra until I release it, me included. Another reason why I'm making you fight me so hard. Jiraiya said, "You're not going to face off against any genin like me. Ever. You already have fantastic fighting skills without any chakra. This is teaching you how to keep a stronger opponent at bay. If you can hold me off for 3 minutes, then who knows how long you can hold off a lesser opponent that's still stronger than you." The way Jiraiya described him, Naruto found it hard to believe he was really any good. Jiraiya repeatedly wore him out, as he had yet to land a single blow on Jiraiya whatsoever. On the other hand though, it was hard to believe that anyone could say something like that about their own strength and not make it seem like empty boasting. "Are you really that strong, Arrow-sensei?" "Absolutely," Jiraiya said as he made a half-tiger seal, Fuinkai, seal release, ... Once again, the sealing array appeared over the entire area before disappearing into the air. "Now I want to see you get to work on making the rest of the scrolls to use the jutsu so you can give it a try once or twice. Then we'll try to get you back to outlasting the time limit." Naruto let out a grumble at having to get back to work on something like that. "Well, bitching about it won't make anything happen any faster, so chop chop, brat." 2 days later, Team 10 training ground, 4 weeks until Chunin exams final round. "How the hell are we supposed to use that?" Ino asked Naruto abruptly. Now was the brainstorming portion of their team meetings, finding out what the others had to add to the team equation and hashing out ways to use it. At the moment, the trio of genin were sitting under their usual tree to keep out of the sun as Asuma supervised from right nearby, and Ino was none too pleased with Naruto's current progress with Jiraiya. "Your sensei for the month sucks if that's what he's got up his sleeve for you, Goldie-kun. Blunt as always it seems. Hey, it's not like I'm just wasting my time here." Naruto defended weakly before getting some more conviction in his voice, "And I'll totally find a way to make this seal work for me when I master it, Ino, dateba yo." Like hell he'd take all of that time to learn the seal and not have a way to make the effort needed to activate it work out heavily in his advantage. All the beatings from Jiraiya he had been taking in an effort to keep the seal safe before its activation were also paying dividends. It was better than fighting clones, and trying to get Shikamaru into gear to fight him directly never really ended very well. Shikamaru on the other hand was thinking to himself about what Naruto had just told them. If Naruto can control the entire amount of chakra in a given area like that, then he controls the battlefield. But without chakra at all, Ino and I aren't much. Still, he's right. There's a way to use that jutsu in a situation like the exams, and if he doesn't figure it out then I'll do it myself. Ino let out a groan of exasperation. "We can't lose to Forward Girl, even if Sasuke-kun is on her team. If she beats us I'll never hear the end of it." She held up both of her hands as if they were both scales. "Sasuke-kun is probably off learning some amazing jutsu that only a genius could pull off, and Chuji's probably getting one-on-one time with his dad to learn things from his clan. And on the other hand we've got the bum who hasn't told us anything about learning anything new, and we've got Goldie-kun and his miracle ability to turn off everyone's chakra including ours. But oh, wait. It takes 3 minutes for him to even load that up." From the more irritable than usual reaction that Ino gave it was clear that she was feeling the stress of it all, and it had only been a week into the training period. She was projecting her own lack of progress with whatever she was trying to learn over this course of time onto them. Naruto had actually learned the seal that they were talking about and had prepared a dozen or so scrolls, but Jiraiya insisted that they continue the physical training for the multiple beneficial reasons of doing so. "Alright, enough," Shikamaru said, getting both Naruto and Ino's attention to focus on him. "Yesterday we worked the kinks out of our usual formations. Now we need to figure out what we know about some of the people we're going to fight. So let's start with who we're going to fight first. Those Iwa kids. We don't know anything about them," Ino said with a shrug. "What could they do about that but head into battle and hope for the best?" "Fine," Shikamaru muttered. He knew that they had nothing on the Iwa Genin team as well, but then again all they had on them was the basic knowledge of what 2 of the members of the team might be able to do due to their clans, so let's skip right to the next team in case we advance. How about those Kumo Genin? Naruto raised a hand as if he were in school and spoke up. They use those swords. The girl with the red hair and the boy on the team both have the same kind of sword. They both have katana, and the girl Samui carries a tanto. They might all be close-range specialist kinds of fighters." Shikamaru nodded and asked another question more important. "If it came down to you against them one-on-one, could you beat them with your machete?" It depends on how good they are. Naruto answered. He knew how to use his machete in a way that was effective for himself, but he was no blade weapon specialist by any stretch of the imagination. He still knew that as he was, if he were to fight someone like Zabuza or Asuma, then no amount of clones wielding deadly close-range weaponry in the world would be enough. Now he didn't think any one of the Kumo genin would be that good, but they would definitely be better with those swords than he was with his machete. We can talk about that later. Shikamaru said with finality on that particular topic. Now for the other half of that fight, what do we know about that other team they're fighting? The one from Konoha with the Hyuga, the guy in green, and the girl with buns in her hair. Tenten's team. Naruto spoke up again and squinted hard in thought. Well, Tenten uses tons of weapons to fight. She's really good at throwing pretty much anything, and I'm sure she can fight up close with a weapon too. The guy in green, Rock Lee, he's fast. He's the fastest guy our age I've ever seen. Naruto didn't think he'd see anyone that fast anytime soon, and then he fought Haku, but he's not just fast, he's strong too. Naruto could still remember the kick to the face he took. Quite a rude awakening to becoming a genin. As strong as you? Ino queried to her fellow blonde. Naruto could effortlessly throw her or Shikamaru around like rag dolls. His taijutsu required him to be stronger than his opponents to be used to full effectiveness. Naruto gave her a sheepish smile. Let's put it this way, Ino-chan, it's not whether he's stronger than me, it's whether I'm stronger than him. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, not really believing that. There's a genin, and we're not even talking about Chuji here, that's stronger than you? Troublesome. I'm not even going to get into the first thing you said about the guy either. Dealing with a wickedly fast person that was physically stronger than Naruto wasn't exactly very reassuring of their chances when going up against them, and the last guy is a Hyuga that we're damn sure not going to let you in close to fight against Naruto. Why? At this point Asuma cut in, taking his spot as overall supervisor to the three, because against a Hyuga, Naruto's style would be useless. He walked over and grabbed Naruto by the wrist. Your style requires you to stick to an opponent with your chakra. The Hyuga's style of taijutsu forces chakra out from their hands and other parts of their body too, just in a different way from yours. They can disrupt your grip. Then they can close off your chakra flow altogether so that you can't even get the chakra through to your hands to grab and stick to them in the first place. He then let out a deep sigh, and from there if they hit you, their taijutsu can rupture organs. There's no real defense against it. You can't build up your organs or your tenketsu, and with the use of their Kekai Genkai Byakugan they can see it all. A deep frown crossed Naruto's face, so going in close against Neji or Hinata might get me slaughtered. He could see maybe Neji pulling it off. Jerks like that usually had the skill to back up their arrogance or else it would have been beaten out of them a long time ago, but Hinata on the other hand, he just couldn't see her shutting down his organs in a fight. But if Asuma said so then it meant that it could always happen, and these matches that were forthcoming didn't really have any rules. Who knew what any of them would be capable of if push really came to shove? Now we need an anti-Hyuga strategy. Shikamaru said before sighing and rubbing his temple, I am never taking another Chunin exam again if we fail this one. Ever. He needed to start writing this crap down at home to help keep up with everything that they needed to do. Asuma had been watching them since day one of team training. He had only been watching as they worked team drills like a well-oiled machine. He only added small comments from time to time when he saw a necessity to do so, and prompted them to make slight adjustments, but they seemed to have a deep grasp on what they were doing. It had only been 5 months, not even half a year since they had even become genin. He was proud. He was unashamed to say that he was excited to see what they could do next. You guys are going to do just fine come finals time. Asuma thought to himself, I just know it. I wonder if I can up my wager with the others. One day later, Shiho's house. Deciding to make use of his day off, Naruto went over to the house of someone he hadn't seen since before leaving to take the Chunin exams since it was her day off as well. He hadn't told Shiho about how he had done upon entering the exams due to everything that had been thrust upon him immediately after returning home. Needless to say, when he finally made the time to go and see her about it she was rather ecstatic. I'm so proud of you Uzumaki-kun. Shiho said happily as she set down a tray of tea on the table she and Naruto had been sitting at. You're one step away from getting promoted, congratulations. There was no ill will towards him being promoted before her because she wasn't a ninja in the active force. Besides, she quite liked her job. It was nice to have someone so enthusiastic for him though, Naruto had to say. Having people be happy for something you did was a fantastic feeling, thanks a lot Shiho-chan. Naruto said as he took a sip of the tea to be gracious. He wasn't particularly one for tea but hey, it was free. I've got to really pull one over during the final tournament though or I'm not going to get anything out of the exams. He had already told her who he was more than likely going to face off against in the competition. Her advice was rather simple for each of the clan kids from Konoha. Against an Inuzuka, Kiba, if he could separate the ninja from the dog and beat them separately that would be far easier than taking them on at once. Against an Akimichi, Chuji, speed would be his greatest weapon, and attacking from off angles would eventually topple the large shinobi. With Naruto's fighting style he would have been advised to stay far away from an Aburame, Shino, or else his chakra would be sucked by the bugs, albeit at a ridiculously lessened pace than any other ninja, but it would still happen if he were to be swarmed so any attempt to get close would have to be very tentative. A Hyuga would be a vaunting challenge in close, but thriving in near quarters was still very possible, just not very advisable because even if he won in the end, the latent danger of the attempt was not really worth the risk. And her advice for fighting an Uchiha that had time to get used to their Sharingan, Sasuke, well, Naruto was not going to be able to move fast enough that he would catch Sasuke off guard with anything he did, and Sasuke was just as fast as him, so he couldn't rely on his body not being able to keep up with his eyes. Shiho's best advice was just to avoid making eye contact and cut a grinding pace in battle to wear him down, something that Naruto was rather certain he could do. Shiho pressed her hands together in thought before grabbing her cup and taking a sip of her own tea. Well, you have the raw talent, you apparently have the pedigree even if you didn't know it until recently, and you have Shikamaru-kun if you don't know how to approach a fight. Thinking of the lazy yet very intelligent Shikamaru got her flustered for a moment before she regained her composure. So what's your big issue Uzumaki-kun? Normally you're all, Dateba yo, I'm gonna kick everyone's ass. She said in a manner of mimicking Naruto before letting out a giggle, or something like that. Come on, tell me what's wrong. Well, Shiho wasn't a competitor in the exam, nor was she a teammate whose morale he felt the need to keep up by keeping his uneasy feeling from her knowledge. But she was a trusted friend, and she was right. Who would she tell that it would get back to anyone that it mattered to? He had listed this grievance to Shikamaru, but he had enough on his plate to worry about this as well. Even though this meant nothing to her, he wanted to talk to someone about it, even if it was just him being paranoid. Okay. Naruto said reluctantly, still weighing the benefits to the cons of telling her anything of this sort. In the exams, there's this guy. Gaara's his name, and he's the freakiest guy I've ever met in my entire life. Just being around the guy made me feel like he wanted me to die. And he did, but that much he didn't need to tell her, and I'm never going to get close to the guy in a fight either. He wouldn't be so shaken if he knew that he had a chance at hitting Gaara, but if dozens of clones couldn't get him to flinch then he had to sit down and brainstorm. Hearing Naruto flat out say that someone intimidated him was a new thing, but Shiho would help him any way she could, even if all she could do in the end was lend emotional support. What kind of jutsu does he use? Sand. Naruto's blunt and to-the-point answer left her with a confused look on the bespectacled blonde girl's face, forcing Naruto to elaborate. Gaara uses sand from this gourd he keeps on his back to smash into stuff like waves on a beach, or he grabs people up and just crushes or suffocates them to death. Shiho cringed at the explanation, and it makes some kind of shield around him that I can't get past to get to him directly. Shiho adjusted her glasses on her face and raised an eyebrow curiously. So this person controls sand. Naruto could hear the skepticism in her voice as to why that would be such a big deal and racked his own brain trying to think of a way to explain why this was so threatening. Okay, when I say sand I'm talking enough sand to cover the floor in each room in your house, up to the top of our toes, and whenever anything gets close to him, no matter what it is, the sand comes up to block for him. The sand can take an explosion from 6 explosive tags going off at the same time. And he can send the sand out at you from anywhere he can see you. He then thought about Gaara's sand defense. I swear, a few times he didn't even know my clones were creeping up on him and they still got stopped by Gaara's sand. That's a lot of sand, and to be able to use it like that. Shiho could now see it in her mind's eye. At first she thought it was just like sand being blown all about like in the wind, but now she could see waves and waves of sand pounding all about. And suddenly the idea of being caught in sand like that didn't seem like such a minor thing. Naruto nodded before speaking up, I have one move that might work, but I've never used it in an actual fight before. The jutsu he had come up with by accident before the exams began. He could do it again, he had already done it and made sure that it wasn't a one-time thing, but he'd actually have to touch the sand. He'd have to put his hands on the sand and pull away, and his experience from clones told him that he wouldn't have much of a chance at that. Hearing that Naruto might have something to use, Shiho looked at him with an inquisitive look, why haven't you tried it in a fight before? She sure wasn't going to spar with him to test it out. She wasn't a fighter at all. Because if I hit someone with it I'd probably kill them. Naruto stated plainly, it's not something I can really use on friends, and I can't just keep knocking down trees since I already know how to do it. I like nature. At least a dozen poor trees fell victim to his technique when he was first trying to discover whether or not it could be used as an actual attack. Taking on a look of pondering, Shiho let out a grunt of focus, well. I'm not sure what to tell you here Uzumaki-kun. She said earnestly, this guy with the sand, it's beyond me. And you don't think you can punch through it or get around it? She got a shake of the head from Naruto in response, I'll try to come up with some way to help you, but I don't necessarily know what I'll be able to find in the end. Naruto abruptly stood up and grabbed her hands to comfort her, hey don't worry about it so much. It was his problem, not hers. All she had been doing since day one had been helping him, and what had he done for her? Not a single thing. Having her worry her little head over something that might have been inconsequential just because he was a little paranoid wasn't fair at all, I'll just keep training. If I'm strong enough then it won't really matter in the end, right? I'm going to have some tricks of my own when the time comes. The confident grin he gave her to assuage any concerns over the matter she may have had didn't really do much once she really began thinking about Gaara's abilities if they were really as Naruto had reported them to be. It was like Gaara was his antithesis on the battlefield. Hopefully he was right and it wouldn't be an issue. Standing in a clearing surrounded by around 20 straw dummies, Tenten suddenly drew 2 handfuls of shuriken and quickly threw all of them at the dummies in front of her and in her peripheral vision before swiftly drawing more and doing the same to the remaining dummies behind her. She repeated this process non-stop until she was stopped by the voice of her sensei, Tenten, what are you doing? Is this what you're intending to train on today? Guy asked. He didn't really have a problem with it, he just wanted to know. Tenten stopped working and turned to Guy, hey, where's Lee? She asked upon noticing that the Guy lookalike was not following along behind the Junin. Guy gave her a smile that gleamed in the sunlight, Lee is doing a few push-ups to stay warm for the next bit of training he's about to receive. I came to get you because personal training time was over. I need you to help the boys learn how to deal with opponents wielding swords. Oh. Tenten said before sighing and wiping her brow with a small smile on her face, well let's go then. That's the spirit Tenten. Guy exclaimed, never be satisfied with your current set of skills, always strive to improve. I still would like to know what you were doing though. You won't be facing that many opponents at once during the exams. At the most it would be 3. Letting out a sheepishly laugh, Tenten fell into step with Guy as they walked to the location that Lee and Neji were left at. I can already fight against any weapons user we'd see in the tournament, but in the next round we might be fighting someone that can make solid clones, lots of them, more than the dummies that I set up. And I don't think he'll be easy to beat a second time. He's the only one I know about so he's the only one I can prepare for. Guy nodded before frowning, who exactly would you all be facing once you advance out of the first round? He asked, the ordering of the brackets having slipped his mind. Well it would either be a team from Iwagakure or one of Konoha's rookie teams. The one with the Nara, the Yamanaka girl and Uzumaki Naruto. Tenten explained to Guy, you know Naruto, you met him for a few seconds when we were heading to the exams in the first place. Of course Guy knew who Naruto was even without Tenten's prompted explanation. Everyone of any sort of decent rank in Konoha's forces knew who Naruto was, yes, the youthful young man that is Asuma's student. He can make that many solid clones. Well it made sense seeing as how he had the Kyuubi within him. He had to be a chakra juggernaut. He could when we first met, the day after he graduated. And that was months ago in Tenten's calendar count. If he was in the final round now, then there was no doubt that he had greatly improved, either that or he had 2 ringers as teammates, but she was betting on the former. If I mess up and let his clones get anywhere near me, then I won't be able to do anything. He'll beat me to a pulp. How wonderful! Guy said, picking Tenten up in a proud hug. My young female student can even point out her own flaws and limitations in combat. And now we have information on possible opponents to share with Neji and Lee. Preparation is victory. Come Tenten, let's train. I don't have a choice, Guy-sensei. Tenten yelled at him as the man took off in a sprint to find Lee and Neji once again. Put me down. Sasuke was currently rethinking everyone's stance on him as a genius as he took on a Kage Bunshin of his sensei Hatake Kakashi. From his experience in his fight against Naruto, one hit would dispel the clone. At first he was put off and rather insulted when Kakashi told him to fight his clone, and once he managed to defeat it they would move on to something different. To spite the man for underestimating him, Sasuke planned on blowing through the clone and walking right up to Kakashi with a what's next attitude. Then he actually started fighting the clone with half of Kakashi's chakra, the clone that wasn't even using Sharingan. It had been a week of training and he hadn't hit Kakashi's clone yet. He was getting closer, but he still hadn't hit the clone. Why Kakashi was making him do this when he was actually working hands-on with Sakura, the man wouldn't say, but it was thoroughly pissing the young Uchiha off. You're getting faster, Sasuke. The dodging Kakashi clone said as it avoided Sasuke's furious taijutsu assault. It's pretty impressive. I'll call it impressive when I turn you into smoke. Sasuke growled out, not taking the clone's patronizing compliments at face value. I've got to be faster. This clone is one step ahead of me all the time and it isn't even using Kakashi's Sharingan. He said as his own Sharingan was locked intently on Kakashi's Kage Bunshin, trying to take advantage of being able to see its steps in advance. Meanwhile, during Sasuke's prolonged engagement against Kakashi's doppelganger, the original was working with Sakura. Sasuke is preoccupied and Chuji's father is taking him for the month so that he can gain better control over his clan techniques. That means that for right now you have me all to yourself. He said, giving her what was perceived to be a smile behind his mask. Lucky you. Sakura returned the man's smile and looked over at Sasuke struggling with Kakashi's clone. Noticing how Sasuke was doing far better than he had been doing at first made her think about her own growth or lack thereof. She hadn't added to her skill set since she finished learning how to water walk in Nami no Kuni, but what are you going to teach me, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi's face turned serious as he started to explain. I remember you getting tree walking down on your first try and then learning how to walk on water in less than a day. Your chakra control is impeccable, so I believe it's high time I teach you a way to use it. Welcome to an introduction into Genjutsu. Hearing that Kakashi was going to teach her something about Genjutsu got Sakura's eyes to widen as she raptly paid attention to everything he would possibly say on the subject. It's admittedly not my forte. Kakashi admitted sheepishly, but I know more than enough about it to get you started on the right track. He held out his hand and gestured for Sakura to grab a hold of it, which she did. Genjutsu basically works by extending your chakra flow through your enemy's cerebral nervous system to control the chakra in their mind. This is how the illusion is cast. So go ahead and try to channel your chakra into me for practice. It's easy this way, just to give you an example of sorts. Sakura nodded and gathered chakra to her hands that were grabbing onto Kakashi's and used the connection between them to place her own chakra into his body. She felt her flow of active chakra end at her hands, so she knew that she wasn't just circulating chakra, she was expelling it. Good. Kakashi complimented as he could feel the foreign chakra enter his system, but when you begin using Genjutsu it's most effective when you use the optimum amount of chakra necessary. Enough chakra to initiate your jutsu, yet not so much that your opponent can feel something wrong. The amount you are using now could tip anyone off that you were trying to influence them somehow. You'll work on that though. It will take practice. He said confidently, getting a firm nod from Sakura in agreement. So she was fired up to learn about this? That was very good indeed. Is there anything else I need to know about using Genjutsu? She asked. It couldn't be just that simple, or they would have learned more about it in the academy. There's quite a bit more to learn actually. Kakashi confirmed, the better you get further down the line the easier a genjutsu will be to cast, but you're a relative novice, so to help you along you will want to try to use some kind of medium to initiate the more effective techniques. Something visual, or something that affects another sense of some sort to distract your enemy, to direct even a small portion of their attention for a moment. Long enough for you to begin your jutsu. He was struggling to come up with some way to explain what he was talking about. Fortunately, Sakura was more than sharp enough to connect the dots and come up with her own example for Kakashi's lecture. You mean like a flash of light or a specific sound? Something like that. Kakashi once again gave the girl a smile, his single visible eye crinkling in a cheerful manner. Exactly like that. I think you'll be a natural at this if you put your mind to it. It's a devastating focus of the ninja arts to specialize in. Sakura beamed at the praise before asking another question. Before we really get started, is there anything else about genjutsu that you think I should know? Kakashi punched the palm of his hand as if he had neglected to mention something. Oh yes. Genjutsu is specifically effective on people that naturally have larger than normal amounts of chakra. If it's someone that develops a massive amount of chakra over time, it won't count since it will have slowly been grown into. It has to be someone that has always had copious amounts of chakra. So much chakra that they never get used to using tiny amounts of chakra and have to work extra hard for control. This makes it so that the minuscule amount of chakra that most genjutsu techniques take to activate aren't felt by those with the large chakra reserves. It's like a drop of water in a filled bucket. Sakura nodded as she absorbed the information. However, she put two and two together about something one would have at first deemed completely irrelevant as her mind raced a mile a minute. Wait, that sounds really familiar. So you're pretty much saying that people that are suckers for genjutsu techniques are people like Dash. Naruto let out a yawn before choking slightly, prior to letting out a sneeze as he sat on the couch in his living room. Being that now was his downtime, he was not wearing his goggles over his forehead or his headband in a bandana style around his neck, nor was he wearing his dark blue arm warmers or his orange windbreaker top, foregoing it just for the dark blue shirt that was usually underneath. Sitting next to him, laying across the longer portion of the sofa, was Ino, eyes shut and seemingly a heartbeat away from napping. "Bless you, Goldie-kun," Ino said without missing a beat, eyes still closed. Naruto on the other hand rolled his eyes at his blonde teammate and nudged her legs with his elbow. "Why are you over here?" "It's my day off and I was going to take a nap." Right after he got through getting himself some more ceiling strips and making himself some more explosive tags, but he could have gotten some clones to do the second thing. "Oh, a nap sounds like a great idea," Ino said brightly, poking at Naruto with her bare foot with a smile on her face. "But I came over here because it's my day off too, and I'll be damned if I'm going to sit behind a counter all day selling flowers. I'm tired," she said, finishing with a pout. "So you'd rather stay over here and bother me for a few hours?" Naruto replied cheekily. He didn't really mind the company at all, to be quite honest. It was better than hanging out alone for the rest of the day after his earlier visit with Shiho. "What makes you think I'm not tired too?" Ino smirked at him before answering his query. "Because you're never tired, love," she commented, batting her eyelashes sweetly. "That should really come in handy a few years from now for more than just your ninjutsu." Having hung around Jiraiya for much of the last 2 weeks, not even bothering to mention the time he had done so beforehand, Naruto of course knew what was being implied and then some. But by now he had conditioned himself to take a certain amount of teasing to keep from being driven insane by his secondary sensei and his rather attractive teammate. Jiraiya's book was also full of rather blue language and comments on the female form, even though that had nothing to do with Fuinjutsu whatsoever. Naruto let out a sigh and sank back into the Seiyushian of the couch. "You know, if Sasuke team ever hears you say this stuff, then he might not think you like him as much as you say you do, Ino-chan." In response, Ino stretched out her legs, placing them on Naruto's lap. This forced a sigh out of Naruto because Ino was being far too affectionate, which meant only one thing as far as he was concerned. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Ino feigned a hurt look. "Why, I'm hurt." "Goldie-kun, what makes you think that I want something?" She then started laughing as Naruto started to tickle her feet. She couldn't pull them away either because of the Nabakan-style grip he had on her. Okay. I'll talk." Naruto then ceased in his tickling assault on Ino to hear what she had to say. "I'm listening." He ignored the rather hard punch Ino gave him in the arm once the tickling stopped. Taking a moment to regain her composure, Ino explained what she required. I want you to teach me how to make Kage Bunshin. Naruto's answer was direct and precise. No. Come on. Ino cried indignantly, why not? I've never said it before, but it's such a cool jutsu. One of me is fantastic, I could only imagine what having two real me's around would be like. Or what about 12? 12 Ino's Naruto. That's 11 more of me to love. Ino's argument broke down into uncontrollable laughter when Naruto devilishly started tickling her again to get her to be quiet. It's a kinjutsu. Naruto defended with a frown as he tickled Ino's feet. Part of the agreement of me learning that jutsu to graduate was that I promised Hokage that I wouldn't just teach anyone that jutsu because it's dangerous. My sensor jutsu is starting to evolve again. When I'm close to people I can feel their chakra compared to mine. You don't have enough for it. After telling her that, Naruto stopped tickling Ino and let go of her, letting her catch her breath. How would you know I don't have enough chakra for it? Naruto gave her a deadpan look. You don't even have enough chakra for one clone. One would exhaust you. And if you messed up the way you're going to when you practice with the jutsu, then you're going to make more than one by mistake until you get control over it, and more than two Kage Bunshin might kill you, Ino-chan. You and Shikamaru can't do it. Naruto had seen that Shikamaru and Ino's specialized clan ninjutsu didn't take nearly as much chakra as his own Kage Bunshin did, maybe because their bodies were conditioned for the techniques through lineage. Still, that meant that they didn't use as much chakra as he did regularly, and they didn't have nearly as much. Both of them combined against Naruto chakra-wise wasn't even a contest, and everyone on Team 10 knew it and accepted this as fact. Ino crossed her arms and grumbled, well, what in the 9 levels of hell gave you so much damn chakra to use? That just can't be natural, you know. A large grin that belied Naruto's actual thoughts came over his face once Ino said that. Yeah, Ino-chan, I know. It's just the way I am, heh. He said with a sheepish laugh, and it was true. It was the way he was without any choice of his own, and it often led to malice heaped upon him as a child, and now he knew why, but honestly, how could one spite him for it? All the while he was thinking something different from what he said. If it's just the way I am, then why am I being such a coward about telling you and Shikamaru about it? Fuck it. The reasoning hadn't come up yet, and most of the things he had due to the Kyuubi had already been more or less explained away by his own teammates as possible traits of a clan, more specifically his clan. Procrastination was the top trait of the next generation, and he was damn sure going to procrastinate on telling Ino and Shikamaru about his demonic little secret for as long as humanly possible. If he didn't need to know until 3 weeks ago, then they didn't need to know about it now. Ino got the conversation off of that track and back onto herself immediately anyway, pulling Naruto's thoughts from something that hadn't really been addressed since he and Jiraiya spoke last about it. Oh well. I'm not going to sit here and beg for a jutsu when I'm already learning one myself. She let out a small laugh. I was just trying to sidetrack myself from finishing up what I need to do to learn my jutsu. It's really hard. She whined, waving her legs aimlessly in Naruto's lap. Being snapped back to normal by Ino's immature outburst, Naruto laughed. You'll get it, Ino-chan, you still have plenty of time. Ino crossed her arms over her chest and gave Naruto a brilliant smile. Why are you so confident all the time? Even back when you sucked at everything, no offense. Naruto waved it off, but even back then you were always thumping your chest and proclaiming that you were the man. Doubt fucks with everything. Naruto said, making a muscle and grabbing his bicep with his other hand in a showy manner. Take a foundation, no matter how strong, sprinkle generously with doubt, and watch it crumble. He pointed to himself. Me? I'm unfuckwithable. Not this exam, not bad weather, not even the many men that wish bad intentions on me can stop me. I rise up, not like a phoenix, but like the zombie corpse of the Yondaime Hokage. He kissed his own fist and pointed up at the sky before gesturing around the room. These seals are for you, Datebayo. Ino just stared at him for a moment before leaning forward and grabbing one of Naruto's whisker-marked cheeks, that was actually fairly articulate. Someone's got a better vocabulary these days. She teased, no child left behind. Reading is fundamental. Naruto gave her a deadpan look as she continued to stretch his cheek out. You're very, very cute, Ino-chan, but you're going to be missing a few fingers if you don't let go in a few seconds. The next day, field near waterfall, 3 weeks until Chunin exam's final round. The usual occurrence of Naruto squaring off against Jiraiya in pitched combat came and went for hours, and Naruto managed to get his time up to 2 minutes and 17 seconds, an impressive jump from the last marked time. The day of rest really did him some good after all. Someone's full of piss and vinegar today, Jiraiya remarked good-naturedly as the two stopped for lunch, heading back into town through the forest. What's got you all fired up? Care to share, Gaki? Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders. Well, everyone's working so hard to get better in time for the finals. I don't want to slack off and have us fail out because of me. He looked up at the taller man in a rather determined manner. It's like, this is my chance to prove that I really am a good ninja. I can't just get shot down now after all of that mouthing off I've been doing since the academy. And it doesn't matter that I made it this far in the first place, because this is the part that everyone's going to see and hear about. Jiraiya just peered down at the boy momentarily as they kept walking back to town. Okay, first of all you need to take all of that weight of the world, and take it off of your shoulders. It's not that big of a deal. He poked the top of Naruto's head. Get this through your skull so that maybe you can calm it down a bit. It's your first Chunin exam. If you fail, it's not the end of the world unless you get killed. Dying was most certainly the end of the world, so to speak, at least for Naruto. So if it looks like you're about to, get killed, Jiraiya said lazily, I'd advise you to quit. Because while quitting might not get you promoted, you sure as hell won't be promoted if your lifeblood makes a fine sheen coating the floor of the arena. Do you hear what I'm saying, kid? Naruto shook his head. There's always a way to win, Ero-sensei. If I quit then during the exams, then I'll quit when the chips are down in a mission. No surrender. Whatever happens in the tournament happens. I'm not giving up unless Ino-chan or Shikamaru are in danger. I've got something to prove. To hell with Gaara, to hell with anyone he had to fight. It was time to prove he was just as good as he had been saying he was for years. Thinking about the worst-case scenario ripped a low growl from his throat. Hearing that got Jiraiya to sigh before he stopped Naruto and looked around. Once it was clear that there was no one on the forest path along with them, he spoke up. Alright, I know it's been a long time coming since we even talked about this, but it's sort of like the elephant in the room, kid. You said you've accessed the Kyuubi's chakra before, but you don't know how to consciously do it. Naruto shook his head with a frown on his face. It just happened when I was upset in Nami no Kuni. I didn't even know that was what I did until you told me about the Kyuubi a few weeks ago. That's dangerous, Jiraiya thought to himself, so he subconsciously taps into the demon chakra when he's angry or hopelessly desperate. And he didn't know how to do it on his own either. There was no doubt that his control in such a state was shoddy at best. So all they had to go on was that in times of desperation Naruto could tap into the Kyuubi's chakra. Well, it was his responsibility to help Naruto gain some semblance of control, and now was as good a time as any to begin. Naruto could use the seal that had been taught to him, and holding him off for over 2 minutes was nothing to turn one's nose at. The thing was, there was no recorded evidence of how to actually utilize the Kyuubi's chakra, but Minato wouldn't have made it an option for Naruto to do were it not intended for him to do so. So now that his structural teaching was out of the way, he had 3 weeks to find a way to get Naruto to learn how to use the Kyuubi's chakra. That would be easy enough, right? Jutsu list. Shakura Myokao Fuin, Chakra Disabling Seal. B-Rank Fuin Jutsu, Ninjutsu, Supplementary. When activated, this jutsu will seal the chakra of anyone or anything caught within its range inside of their body, user included. 3 prepared scrolls are the minimum medium needed to use the jutsu. Multiples of 3 are needed to extend the range, which would be at a minimum of 50 yard circumference as long as the user can pay the hefty chakra toll to activate the seal in the first place. This seal is capable of changing the scope of a battlefield given a user with enough chakra to far reach across the entire area, but of course it is a double-edged sword as it does not distinguish friend from foe or even spares the user. In the older times where war was rampant, this jutsu was originally created and prominently used on the battlefield. It was used to trigger stalemates between 2 opposing forces, allowing one side to retreat more safely with the other side more hesitant to pursue Sans chakra. It was also used as a trap by one single ninja to initiate an ambush from his allies nearby to slaughter the helpless forces caught in the sealing range. This inadvertently led to the popularity of trained sensor ninja to prevent such ambushes from taking place in battle. Hey, you're not a genius. Who cares? Read this and you won't suck at Fuinjutsu, by Jiraiya. Level up. To realize where you stack up to those that also practice Fuinjutsu, there lies a ranking system that is used for one to discover this. Now this ranking system isn't widespread enough that you can get yourself free drinks at the bar or get yourself laid by telling people how high you rank in this system. Unfortunately, Fuinjutsu isn't really deemed the sexiest of specialties, but it looks good on a resume even if you aren't that high. Level 1 to 3. You know enough about Fuinjutsu to make the easy stuff like explosive tags in your spare time to practice your array making. However, in larger techniques, the only reason that you would be around would be to play the part of glorified chakra battery. You know next to nothing, so this is the time where you would shut your lips, open your ears and eyes, and learn how to work with more complicated things. Level 4 to 6. You are now adept enough at Fuinjutsu to begin your own personal study in earnest. You know enough to keep from blowing yourself up or making dud explosive notes and sealing scrolls. At this point you have a few techniques, but they are usually cumbersome and rather unwieldy for combat. You can design seal tags for more advanced and powerful sealing techniques. Level 7 to 9, you are skilled at many different techniques that range from larger ritualistic methods to even the smaller scale techniques that have more of a working place in active battles. At this point others will look to you for advice and other things when it comes to Fuinjutsu. The only thing keeping you from complete mastery of your art is the fact that you have not innovated your own jutsu involving seals yet. Depending on your skill, to venture past this point you must invent at least one Fuinjutsu to achieve master level. Level 10 and beyond, this is true master level. Any number past level 10 that you reach is just ceremonial, indicating that you have given something back to the art of Fuinjutsu by way of creating more and more practical techniques to increase the scope of sealing. You may now officially flaunt your rank in an attempt to woo the ladies, because anyone past level 10 is dangerous enough to fight a battle with nothing more than their seals and physical abilities and can win against most normal level ninja. Uzushiagakuer instituted this system a long time ago, and it is used today in Konoha despite the lack of real sealing specialists in the village. A nifty little thing we have in Konoha is that you can have your sealing level recorded for posterity. You can even get your ninja identification updated with your level of sealing expertise on it, so those of you with large egos may want to get a piece of that. That's it for part 9. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.